Okay, good evening, vinyl community. I said I was going to try to do these videos more frequently, and yeah, it's been, I think, a little over a week since I did the last one, so this is good. I'm going to just do a quick heavy rotation, some stuff I've been listening to, talk a little about Elvis Costello, then I'm going to talk jazz, and then I'm going to end it with classical because that's how I always do my videos because most people aren't into classical, but I saved that to last. So let me get right into it. Here's an album which I think this was in my brother's record collection, and I upgraded my copy. I've listened to this album a lot over the years, and this is an upgrade. Jerry Lee Lewis. This was from itself. Just the name of the album is Jerry Lee Lewis. I think this was from like '77. It's like mid late '70s. Um, just an absolute banger. Opens with Don't Let Go, which, as we all know, was a popular, you always knew it was a hot night for the Jerry Garcia band when they did Don't Let Go. Um, Do It Yourself, Ian Dury and the Blockheads. This is a great freaking record. I am definitely on the hunt for more Ian Dury. This is the second album I've been able to find. Yeah, I think you can find like greatest hits compilations, but the actual albums are not easy to find. I've got one other one, and I got that one when I was in England last year. Though I think this is a better album. So I want to talk about Elvis Costello real quick. Growing up, just listening to like alternative radio, I kind of knew who the guy was. I just kind of recognized his face. The guy that looked like Buddy Holly. Knew very little about his music. When I was in college, a friend of mine, I was in the car with him, giving him a lift. He threw this cassette into my player. I said, "Hey man, check this out. See what you think." It was this album, Get Happy, and to this first I'd ever really heard of him, and I experienced something which, to this day, I've never heard an album that affected me quite the same way as this one did. I immediately was like, what the hell is this? Every song was just so goddamn good. I just like immediately was like, man, this sounds cool. Um, and I held on to that cassette. It didn't leave my tape deck. It rode around in the car with me for a semester. That was my intro to Elvis Costello, and I started picking up some of his. At that time, I was in college, and what I had was on cassette. Now, I decided to talk about Elvis for a specific reason, but anyway, before I get too into it, this was the album that got me going on him. Now, this is his fourth album, and most people. I'll tell you what, I'll get back to it. So, this was like. There's his first three albums are the really popular ones. This is like the fourth album, but the thing is, for people that really know his catalog, to me, this is the beginning of like the really good period. Um, but not the album that most people are familiar with. So kind of what got me going was I picked up this album a while ago. 10 Bloody Marys and 10 How's Your Fathers. So maybe you haven't seen this album. This is a compilation. It came out in the UK. And what it is, like I said, Elvis's really popular period were the first three albums. These are the ones everyone knows if they know Elvis. They know My Aim is True, This Year's Model. This is an import. Record cover slightly different. Armed Forces, which you might also know as this album cover. Also an import. Um, so that's the period that most people know. Um, this album is a compilation of weirdo tracks. songs that were like on B-sides, songs that were released as singles, some alternate takes of songs that appear on some of his albums. Now, you probably know its U.S. counterpart, which is called Taking Liberties. Almost exactly the same album, some important differences. Um, those first three albums kind of got treated like Beatles albums. The U.S. record company yanked off tracks and replaced them with singles. So the American editions, this in America, this has What's So Funny About Peace, Love, and Understanding on it, which was a single. So the UK edition has the singles that didn't appear on the albums. And Taking Liberties did not have the singles, but had tracks that got yanked off the American editions. So they're a little bit different. Also, the UK one is sequenced differently. The tracks appear in a different order. I think the UK one's sequenced much better. So if you're into Elvis, you might check out this album. This is really cool. And my only complaint is that I've only listened to this once. It didn't sound that great. It was just kind of flat sounding. I want to listen to it again, but that was my impression, was that this album sounded kind of flat. And I think a lot of those early Elvis albums, basically, okay, here's what I'm getting at. In the mid 90s, he got a CD, the second round of remasters, reissues on what was then the Ryko disc label, which became Rhino. You would probably be better off getting either the Ryko discs or the Rhino reissues. They sound really good. They did a great job of remastering, and all those weirdo bonus tracks, they appear as bonuses on the CDs. And I'll get to this one in just a minute. So the companion disc to this is another album which is fairly rare, called Out of Our Idiot. Same idea, a bunch of tracks that didn't appear on albums, but this is from kind of the later period, starting with like Get Happy, Trust, Imperial Bedroom, the really primo years for Elvis Costello and the Attractions. So this is a really good compilation. This has got a bunch of cool songs on it that kind of appear from a slightly later period than this compilation. And this has one very important track on it, a song which some of you have probably never heard. It's called Turning the Town Red. Appears on this compilation album. An absolutely amazing track that didn't appear on any of his albums. An absolute banger. And it shows up as a bonus track on this album. So again, get either the Ryko discs or the Rhino reissues. The remaster is really good. And you get all that killer bonus material. The Rhino editions, they expanded them out to 2 CDs, so there's like even more material. So this is the album Goodbye Cruel World, and I just want to read something to you real quick. How does it go? Oh yeah. This is a cool album. This is, I think, not a bad album at all, and it's somewhere in here. Oh yes. Congratulations, you just purchased our worst album. Elvis hates this album. He just complains endlessly about how terrible he thought this album was. He thought that the production was like really dated 80s production with like too much synthesizer and all that. Artists aren't always the best judges of their own material. I think he's way too hard on this album. It's got some cool tracks on it. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about just some of the Elvis So I've talked about those two compilations and some of the cool tracks that maybe you've never heard. Um, Most people, like I said, they only know that early material. So I want to talk about a little bit of stuff that maybe you haven't heard. Basically, the bottom line was Elvis was on Columbia during his most popular period. This is the last album he did on Columbia, an album that's never really grown on me, but a lot of people swear by it. The critics love it. I've watched a video ranking the video. One guy thought this was his best album. That's the end of his time on the Columbia label. So when I got turned on to Elvis when I was in college, he just left Columbia and put out his first album on Warner Brothers, an album called Spike. This was, let me see what the date is, 1989. So when I got turned on to Elvis, this album was kind of getting some airplay. This was kind of a minor comeback for him. Contained the track Veronica, which was kind of a minor hit for him. Um, so I got this album again. I probably had it on cassette back in the day. This was the one that came out when I was first really getting to know Elvis. So I've listened to this one a lot over the years, and it was the first one he produced that was produced by T-Bone Burnett, and I've listened to this one a lot, and it's really aged well. I just listened to it again this week. First time I'd listened to it in a long time. I put it on my stereo system at home and just listened to this sucker from start to finish. And I think this was the best thing he'd done since Imperial Bedroom at that time. And also, I would say probably the strongest album that we were to see from him for quite a while. So that's one that you may not have heard that I would really recommend. Then the years go by, he puts out tons of records. There's a lot of Elvis Costello records I still have not even heard. This is, I think, one of the better later ones from 2010, National Ransom. Now, one thing I'll say that these two albums have in common is these are creatures of the CD era. So they're very long. And, this one I think is a great candidate for like a 45 RPM reissue because it could really do with breaking it up. But I've listened to this one a few times in the past month, and I feel like I'm just starting to wrap my head around the album. There's so many songs on it, but it has got some just dynamite songs. This is he's put out so many albums. I think this is one of the stronger ones. It's got some tremendous songs on it. There's one song on here. Which song is it? I forget, but there's one song on here I think is like the best vocal performance I've heard from him since like Imperial Bedroom. It is, what is the name of that song? Oh, I forget. Anyway, there's just some amazing songs on this album. So yeah, check out National Ransom. Then this one, he's put out like 3 albums since this one. This is Look Now. Just this one is another just very strong album. I believe he won a Grammy for this album. So I'd say this is probably the best thing he's done. Um, he's put out about 3 albums since this one, and I'd say this was the last really strong album he did. Again, there's so many, it's hard to keep them all straight. There's just so many. And I'll draw your attention to one other thing, which maybe you've never seen. You might see this box set floating around. It's pretty rare. I paid $29 for it. It's got 5 CDs on it. The CDs are pretty short. It's 5 nights on tour. Um, each disc is only about 30 minutes long, but it's just Elvis and his keyboard player, Steve Naive. Um, so it's just like acoustic renditions of a lot of his songs, spanning just the whole catalog. New songs, stuff going back to the first album, like Allison. Um, just all, and it's just, man, it's really, it's just great, man. It's just an acoustic set, just him and his keyboard player, Elvis on acoustic. Um, and there's some really beautiful moments on here, and it's nice to hear a different arrangement of some of these songs. So this one's, when I saw it in a record store, I pounced on it. I've never seen it since. So if you see this and you're into Elvis Costello, grab it, grab it. You'll never see it again. So real quick, I'm going to a record convention next weekend. There's one coming up in Richmond. I've been to that convention a couple of times. I like it because we tend to get vendors that show up there from as far south as like South Carolina. So we get some vendors there that I don't see at other shows. It's worth the drive down there. I've always gotten great stuff at the Richmond show. Um, and I've been listening to a lot of jazz. I'm going to do a jazz section now. And I just want to real quickly say, like, here are some things I'm hoping to find at this record show. Um, Jazz on vinyl can be incredibly expensive. I mentioned this in my last video. I kind of feel like a big part of what drives up the price is Blue Notes in particular. Scarcity. Scarcity drives up price. But Columbia was a big label, and titles that ended up on Columbia tended to get a lot of copies sold. So it keeps the price down. So there are some classic Columbia jazz albums that you should be able to find and won't break the bank. I picked up this copy of Porgy and Bess pretty recently. I would say it's a VG copy. It's got one kind of bad scratch on it, but it plays out after about 2 minutes, and it sounds amazing. And I think this is one of Miles's best albums. I really like the Gil Evans period. So another label that I'm hoping to see that you can find usually pretty cheap is the CTI label. I listened to this album again last night. This is an incredible album. So this is kind of that funky 70s period. But yeah, there's a lot of Freddie Hubbard on this label. There's a lot of great stuff on CTI. And they're famous for having really great record covers too. So this album in particular has Herbie Hancock, Freddie Hubbard, Ron Carter, and Billy Cobham backing Milt Jackson. So just an all-star cast. I love this album so much. And when I'm down there, I'm hoping to scarf up a bunch of stuff on the CTI label because it's so good. So I mentioned in another video that I'm starting to kind of tip my toe in the original jazz pressings. They're so bloody expensive. I've been sticking to Tone Poets and things like that. But I did get one original mono Jody Grind Horace Silver Quintet, and I managed to get a pretty solid copy, definitely a good VG of an original mono with a gatefold. And what is that? I think around $30 for this, but it does sound awfully damn good, and I can see why people covet these originals so much. And I picked this one because I think this is one of the better, all the Horace Silver albums from the 60s. They're all so good. That said, I think this one is exceptionally good. So yeah, I got a nice, very good copy, original of the Jody Grind in mono, and I absolutely love everything about it. Another thing I picked up pretty recently is this disc. It's a double. Herbie Hancock Mawandishi. Now, I was always confused about this. I was told, I heard that before Herbie did Headhunters, there was kind of a weird period. They formed a band called Mawadishi, and these were kind of like, I saw that album floating around, and I didn't quite understand. It sounded like he was trying to do something different. Um, so what this is basically there's a brief period where Herbie was on Warner Brothers, and he put out 3 albums, and that's what this is. All 3 albums on a double CD. And I didn't realize it when I bought it, but one of the albums that was included is an album called Fat Albert Rotunda. So if you remember the old cartoon, the Fat Albert cartoon, it had kind of a funky soundtrack. I don't know how much of this music actually made it onto the cartoon, but the idea was that Herbie cut a soundtrack album for that cartoon, and it does sound like the music I remember from that cartoon. So, what this is in hindsight, this is the album he did right after The Prisoner, the last album he did on Tone Poet. And you can tell that these are from a very similar period. He's starting to get funkier on this album. Still, it's very similar to The Prisoner, but you can tell, you can kind of in hindsight tell the direction he's heading in. So I was really kind of happy to see that I now got a second copy of the Fat Albert Rotunda, which is a kick-ass album. And then we get the other two, which is a sextet. Um, yeah, kind of him doing kind of a different thing. Maybe trying to kind of do something like what Miles had done on Bitches Brew. But it's all just great stuff. So yeah, check this out. This is a good deal, man. This is 2 CDs, all of Herbie's stuff when he was with Warner Brothers in the early '70s. So I know I mentioned in my last video that when I really got turned on to jazz the first time was like in the 2000s, and I just bought an absolute shit ton of stuff on what was coming out at the time, the Rudy Van Gelder editions. They were cranking these out. They were cheap. They were on compact disc. I thought this was, I thought I was getting a really good deal. Now people are not so crazy about these. The remastering is kind of a little flat sounding. And I said in my last video that I was going to kind of go through all of my RVGs and give them another listen, see how they hold up, see if I want to upgrade them. Maybe it sounded better than I thought. So I've listened to a few. This was one of the ones I listened to. It's a spectacular album. I might upgrade it. It sounded okay, but I might upgrade it. It is definitely an absolute one of Lee Morgan's most important albums. And then I also listened to The Big Beat. And I listened to, this is Art Blakey and the Messengers. And I listened to it for a very specific reason. I have been listening to a lot of Tone Poets, and I absolutely loved this album, The Witch Doctor, Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. And I don't know what the deal is with this album. It just sounds, it's just, I hate to say it, but it is just so much better than most of the other ones. It's just absolutely crackles with energy. And it's pretty much the same lineup. You got like a trumpet player and a sax player, but when they come in together, it sounds like a big, just New Orleans band. It's just got such balls, such swagger. The band just sounds bigger on this album, and I think it's probably could just be, the power of Tone Poet mastering at work. And that this is kind of the sound you could get if his albums got all got like the tone poet treatment, because this one just, man, there's just something this album has that a lot of the other ones don't quite have. And I was kind of looking through my RVGs trying to find something that I thought kind of captured what I heard on that album, and I thought this one was one of the better ones. Very similar lineup. We got Lee Morgan, Wayne Shorter, Bobby Timmons, um, but there's another Art Blakey album which I think is another really good candidate. And this one is not a Blue Note. This is on Riverside, the album Ugetsu. And this one's got Freddie Hubbard instead of Lee Morgan. We got Cedar Walton on piano. This one is just an ass kicker. It is live at Birdland, and you can tell it's live. The gentleman, I forget his name, but the guy that you hear that always introduced the bands at Birdland, he comes out and he goes, "Ladies and gentlemen," introduces the band, and right from the start, they are just bam on all cylinders. I mean, they are just absolutely on fire on this album. So yeah, this is another one that kind of, to me, there's a lot of Art Blakey albums, and they're all excellent. But this one and The Witch Doctor, to me, stand out. I mean, these are, I know everyone seems to like Moaning. Moaning's a great album, but to me, these two, from the ones I've heard, these two just are absolute just titans. So some other things that I've really been digging, I've been listening to a lot of jazz. This is from the classic series, Lonnie Smith, Think. It's called Think because they covered the Aretha Franklin song. This is just, this is kind of that soul jazz period from the later 60s. You can tell he's all dressed up like it's the late 60s, but just an absolute swinging dynamite, just killer album of Lee Morgan on trumpet. One of the most popular jazz albums of all time. I've been listening to the Cologne concert, or Köln concert, Keith Jarrett, recorded in 1975. My copy is really dirty looking, but the album is very, very clean. So yeah, one of the most popular jazz albums of all time, the most popular solo piano jazz album. To be honest, I think all the real fireworks come on side 1 and 2. Side 4 is only about 6 minutes long, and I think maybe he was getting tired by side 3. But it's all really good. But when I listen to it, I think the real fireworks are on the first album, side 1 and 2. But it's all great. It's a very famous album. I paid $5 for my copy. You can find it everywhere, and if you haven't heard it, you should. So I think that for this jazz listener, the stuff I really like the most are albums where they kind of branch out beyond just like the quartet, where you get a couple jazz, a couple of brass players to kind of fatten out the sound. And I'll give you 2 examples of that really did it for me. Tender Moments, McCoy Tyner, a tone poet. So we got I'm counting 8 musicians on this album, and we got McCoy, we got Lee Morgan, we got a trombone player, James Spaulding, on sax and flute, Benny Maupin on tenor sax, we got a tuba player, we got a French horn player, and it just, man, you get such a fat, groovy sound. I just love this album so much. I just practically blew out my speakers cranking it because it was so good. Here's another one. This is a more recent tone poet, Hank Mobius, Slice of the Top. We got James Spaulding on alto sax, Lee Morgan again on trumpet, Kian Zawadi on euphonium, Howard Johnson on tuba, and of course the man on tenor sax, McCoy Tyner on keyboards. So yeah, this sucker just swings. Oh my god, it's so good. If you're into collecting tone poets, get that one. So yeah, I want to also touch on one other thing before I move off of jazz. I was talking about the Van Gelders and how they. It's good that they're doing tone poets because some of the CDs that Blue Note put out weren't quite as good as they could have been. But as far as if you're into collecting CDs, and I certainly am, um, I've had a lot better luck with some labels. I could talk about Riverside, but I'm not going to talk about Riverside right now. But I think that a lot of titles, there was a thing in kind of the CD era where there were a lot of kind of bad versions that came out in the 80s. And then they got their shit together. And about the mid 90s, they figured out how to really properly remaster stuff. And I think that Columbia, unlike Blue Note, just did a fantastic job on their CD remasters. Everything I've got on Columbia, once you pass the 80s and they kind of have this look to them, they all just sound dynamite. And they certainly are more affordable than vinyl. So, yeah, if you're kind of trying to watch your budget, um, get some CDs if it's on the Columbia label. They sound really great. I'm just trying to find some examples. I always listen to Caravanserai at least once a year. I listen to this album all the time. I've got copies on vinyl and compact disc. Also, about once a year, I replay Thrust by Herbie Hancock. This year, I decided I'd just listen to the CD version, see how it held up. It sounds great. It sounds just as good as the LP version. And I know I've mentioned this before. This is probably going out of print if you can still find it. Columbia gave us this really nice box set of mono recordings from Miles Davis. And this is the period of Miles that I think is his best. So we got all the heavy hitters are in this box set in mono. We got Milestones. We got Miles Ahead. We got Sketches of Spain. We got Porgy and Bess again. We got this thing that nobody's ever heard of. We got Roundabout Midnight. We got what I think is a hugely underrated album. So yeah, this is a real deal. There's just so much. Again, I think all of his best stuff is all what I think is his best stuff. It's all in this one box set in mono. It's an absolute deal. If you see this, please do not hesitate. It is so good. So now I'm going to head into classical. And super quick, I was watching a video just this week. A guy, an audiophile, runs a record store in just outside Thousand Oaks, California. He does great videos where he talks about stuff that's in his store. And he made the claim that this was one of the crown jewels of the Living Presence collection. Paul Prey conducts Debussy. He thought this was one of the absolute best albums out of the entire Living Presence, and I happen to own a copy. So I thought, well, I should give this a listen. And sure enough, it is absolutely stellar. I will be looking for an upgrade. I'd say mine's probably a VG copy, I would say. It's a little noisy. My copy is a little noisy on side 1. Side 2 is pretty damn good. Side 1's got Lemaire on it. Lemaire is just one of those pieces. We are just so spoiled rotten. There's so many great recordings of it out there. The Reiner is maybe one of my favorites. We got 2 really nice renditions from Pierre Boulez. We got Bon Carillon. We got Haitink. There's so many just wonderful, just amazing. A lot of people like the Charles Monk recording, but this one stands. There's just so many great ones out there, and this one is certainly one of the greats. I would like to get a slightly better copy if I can find one, but it is definitely a very fine sounding record. Another video I watched recently, a guy um, was praising the Bruno Walter recording of Mahler 2. Now, he was talking about vinyl. I don't have this on vinyl, but I do have this Sony disc, which gives you the first and second symphony. Now, I, the, you know, Mahler second, like Lemaire, is one of those pieces where we're just spoiled rotten because there's so many great recordings to choose from. But usually people will say there's two that you really have to hear because these were two conductors that knew Mahler. Um, One is Otto Klemperer, and the other is Bruno Walter. Um, and I kind of, unfortunately, kind of fell into the opinion that people have that Bruno Walter was a little too nice. He was a very nice man, and he wasn't a mean son of a bitch like Klemperer. So Dick Klemperer got more of the angst of the piece, and there was more kind of grit and existential, just whatever to the Klemperer recording, and this was a little too tame and a little too nice and blah blah blah. So I hadn't listened to this recording in a very long time, and I watched this guy's video and I thought, man, I should really give this recording a whirl. I haven't listened to it in a tremendously long time. Um, so yeah, um, I listened to it, and there were definitely a lot of places in there where I felt like this sounds right. This sounds like maybe how it's supposed to sound. Yeah, it's a dynamite performance sonically. I think they did a great job remastering. It sounds really damn good to my ears. And yeah, this really is. If you're into Mahler, you're into the Second Symphony, you absolutely should hear the Bruno Walter recording. So both Walter and Klemperer, there's multiple recordings, and we lucked out. We got one good sounding recording from the stereo era out of each of them before they passed. So there's like lots of early recordings that maybe don't sound all that great, and we lucked out. We got one really good recording of the second out of both of these conductors. Um, so that kind of got me thinking, like, I know I have an album floating around of Bruno Walter conducting the fourth, which is my favorite Mahler symphony. Um, so I gave this a whirl too, and it couldn't be more different. I gotta admit, man, this is just like, man, it just doesn't have it. Yeah, he just sounds kind of like at parts he's kind of like rushing through it. It's as David Hertz would say, it's tremendously underplayed, which means, you know, you know, the the symphony just sounds the orchestra sounds like they're bored playing it or whatever. That's what he uses a phrase. This performance is underplayed, and I got that with this recording. I was just like, this is my favorite Mahler symphony, and I just felt like I've got so many other versions to compare it with. I just felt like he was like just phoning it in. He just didn't seem like he was engaged. So my go-to for the fourth has always been Raphael Kubelik. Um, I The Kubelik cycle to me is the benchmark that I compare all Mahler performances with. I just think he does. There isn't a bad performance as an entire cycle. I think he really gets the idiom. He also seems to really get the more modernist side of Mahler. So this has always kind of been my favorite recording of the fourth. Probably still is. But I'd always heard that there was a really good recording by Andre Previn. So I'm talking about this recording, Previn Pittsburgh Symphony. I finally heard this recording just this week because I wanted to do a comparison with what I just heard on the Bruno Walter, and this truly is one of the greats. Great performance, sonically, just you know, sound wise, everything just goes right on this recording. Sonically, it probably beats the Kubelik. It definitely beats the Kubelik sonically. Just everything just goes right. Everything falls into piece. This is definitely one of the greats. I'd never heard it until this week. Um, the reason I hadn't heard it was, I'm going to talk about this real quick. It was buried in this behemoth box set of Andre Previn. His stuff when he was with EMI, a lot of 70s recordings. This is the HMV stuff. Um, so this is a big behemoth box set. And I got a 96 compact disc. And I gotta be honest, I've got a couple behemoth box sets like this. And I gotta be honest with you, this one is kind of a disappointment. There's just a lot of stuff in here, and a lot of it I'm just not really all that interested in. The good news is, well, there's a lot of Russian music in here. There's a lot of Russian music. Um, there's some really good Tchaikovsky ballets. I listened to the Swan Lake a while back. It's great. It's dynamite. But it's also 3 CDs worth of Tchaikovsky ballet music. That's a lot of ballet music. There's a lot of Shostakovich in there. Never been a big fan of Shostakovich. I'm hoping maybe one day it'll grow on me. A lot of people whose opinions I respect swear he's one of the most important symphony writers of the 20th century. I still have not really gotten the thing with Shostakovich. But there's some good stuff in here too. It's not all bad. Well, we got kind of an overrated Carmina Burana. People rave about this. I like the Antal personally. We got a kind of overrated Holst Planets. I like E.G. Normandy on that one. But there's some really good stuff. We got some, lots of Prokofiev in here, and some of it's stuff that doesn't get performed as often, so that's cool. He's really good when it comes to Britain. There's some Elgar in here that's really good. He was always really good at conducting British conductors. Unfortunately, he did an incredible Vaughan Williams cycle. That was when he was on RCA, so it's not included in this box set. The famous Walton First Symphony, also recorded on RCA, also not in this box set. However, we get a really good Rachmaninoff bells. I love the bells. I was lucky enough to see this when I was in London last year. I've such a great piece, and I've yet to find a recording that I think matches what I heard when I was in what I heard it live last year. But this is a really good one. This is maybe the closest I've heard. Definitely, this is one of the high points of that box set, in my opinion. Um, and while we're talking about Andre Previn, I'm going to mention one other album that I stumbled upon a couple months ago. I picked this one up. I have never seen this album before. I've never seen it since. This is Alicia de la Rocha doing Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto Number 3, Previn conducting. Um, this is, like I said, I had never seen this recording before. Never seen this album before or since. It's a weird one-off. But I think this might be my new favorite recording of the Rachmaninoff Third, which is his best concerto. Yeah, this is a banger. This is an absolutely stunning, splendid recording. Better than the one he did with Ashkenazi later. Um, yeah, my go-to for Rack 3 has always been this one. This is Byron Yanis with Charles Monk conducting. Now, this is all I got. I got this compact disc from Live in Stereo. I believe we got a big set of reissued Living Stereo coming out in the next couple months. Some of the jewels from the Living Stereo. I believe those are going to be 45 RPMs. Um, this is not included in that batch. I wish they would give this one some kind of an audiophile release. Um, there could be other ones out there. I don't know, but this is what I've got. This was from the '90s when um, the Living Stereo series came out on compact disc. Um, this is the one I've got. I would like to see this get an upgrade. So yeah, they've just put out a whole batch of living stereos. They chose not to include this one, which I think is a pity. But the good news is I think this one might be even better. So yeah, keep your eye open for that one. Last thing I'm going to touch on is um, I got this weirdo bookstore near where I live at, and they got you know um, they don't know what to do with their classical. They sometimes get classical. Most of it's junk. They sell it for $1. And occasionally you luck out, something really good ends up in there. And that happened. I managed to get the original pressing of one of Radu Lupu's recitals. Schubert, Brahms. This is what the original version looks like. It's been reissued 1,000,000 times, but I looked it up on Discogs, and this is an original. Not a Decca, but it is a London. Some guy wrote on the cover. I don't care because I like listening to the music. And yeah, I was really happy to get me one of his all time great recordings of an absolute genius keyboard player. So yeah, I got a weirdo bookstore near where I live at that sometimes gets classical records. They don't know what to do with them, and they sell them all for $1. And occasionally you luck out and you find something like this. So that's what I got tonight. Good night, vinyl community. It's been a pleasure as always. You all have a good evening. Take care.